All right, let's jump right in today. We're taking a deep dive into how AI is actually being used out in the economy.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see some real-world data.
Instead of just all the hype and the predictions.
Right, exactly. It's easy to get caught up in all that. So the research we're looking at today comes from Anthropic,
Okay.
and they analyzed over 4 million real-world conversations
Wow, that's a lot of data.
with their AI assistant, Claude. And it gives us this really fascinating glimpse into how people are actually using AI in their work.
Yeah, like not just talking about it, not theorizing about it, but
It's exactly, like actually doing it. So millions of data points, real people using AI to get stuff done.
yeah, it's really happening now. This isn't some science fiction movie.
Yeah, it's really cool to see.
One of the things that really stood out to me was that AI usage isn't just like evenly spread across all jobs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It
Okay.
seems to be really concentrated in certain fields, particularly software development, writing, and then roles that involve a lot of analysis.
So areas where you're processing a lot of information, maybe generating a lot of text, looking for patterns.
Exactly.
So it's not necessarily that AI is taking over entire jobs. It's more about certain tasks
Right.
within those jobs becoming like AI assisted.
Exactly. I think that's a really important point. It's not this like wholesale replacement. It's more like this subtle integration into specific tasks.
Yeah. So for example, like let's say you have a foreign language and literature teacher. They might be using AI to brainstorm teaching strategies or, come up with a new lesson plan.
Right.
But they're probably not using it for things like grant writing or
Exactly.
keeping student records.
Right. And the research actually bears that out.
Oh, interesting.
Like they specifically looked at how AI was being used in different roles, and that's exactly the kind of pattern they found.
I mean, that makes sense to me because those are like very different tasks requiring different skills.
Totally. Like one is very creative,
Right.
and the other is much more administrative.
Have you noticed that in your own work too, where some things just lend themselves better to AI?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that actually leads us to another really fascinating point that came out of the research.
Good.
Only about 4% of occupations are using AI for 75% or more of their tasks.
Oh, wow. So it's not like deeply embedded in most jobs yet.
Not yet,
Mm-hmm.
but there are definitely these like pockets where it's already having a huge impact.
I see.
So, it's not like AI is running the show in every workplace, at least not
Oh,
yet.
yeah, yeah. But I bet there are some professions where we are seeing
Oh, absolutely.
pretty high levels of integration.
Yeah, there are definitely some standouts. Marketing managers, for example, they're using AI a lot for market research, strategy development,
That makes sense.
things like that. But not so much for things like coordinating trade shows
Right.
or client relationship management.
Interesting. So it's being used strategically, but not like every single thing is being transformed by AI.
Right. And that's a key takeaway here. It's not this all-powerful force that's like reshaping every single job.
Yeah. Not yet, at least.
Right.
It makes you wonder, though, like, what skills is AI actually demonstrating in these real-world interactions?
Well, the researchers actually dove into that,
Yeah.
and they found that Claude was showing a lot of like cognitive skills, critical thinking, reading comprehension, even programming.
But I'm guessing not so much the hands-on stuff, like fixing a car or plumbing.
Yeah, not so much. Those are still very much human domains.
Right.
Now, here's where it gets kind of interesting.
All right.
One of the top skills that Claude was showing was active listening.
Really? I mean, that's not something you typically associate with AI, right?
Exactly. And I think this has more to do with Claude's design.
Okay.
It's designed to be conversational. It rephrases your input. It asks clarifying questions. So it might not be that people were specifically looking for an AI that could listen,
Right.
but more that Claude's conversational style made it seem like a good listener.
That's a really subtle but important distinction.
Exactly. And it kind of reminds us that we need to be careful about how we interpret some of these findings.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm curious, did the research look at all at the relationship between AI usage and like income levels?
They did.
Yeah.
And this is where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
AI usage actually peaks in occupations that are in the upper quartile of wages.
Yeah.
But then it drops off at both the highest and the lowest ends of the spectrum.
Oh, that's interesting. So not the very top executives.
Right.
And not the entry-level folks either.
Right. It's somewhere in between.
It's like this sweet spot.
Exactly. And if we think back to the skills we were talking about, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
The highest paying jobs often require like really complex human judgment or physical dexterity
Right.
that AI just can't replicate yet. And then at the other end, Very low-paying jobs might not have the resources or infrastructure to even implement AI effectively.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. So for our listeners out there, think about your own job. Where does it fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask.
And does it make sense based on what we're seeing in the data?
Yeah. The research actually highlighted some really interesting examples.
Okay, like what?
Computer programmers, for example, showed really high levels of AI usage, which, aligns with their skills and their wages.
Right.
But then on the flip side, waiters and anesthesiologists, they showed much lower usage.
Huh. So kind of representing the lower and the higher ends of that wage spectrum.
Exactly. And it kind of illustrates that point about where AI is being most readily adopted.
Right, right. Now, I want to talk about the difference between AI replacing humans, which we call automation,
Right.
and AI enhancing human capabilities or augmentation,
Yeah.
because it feels like that's a really crucial distinction to make.
Absolutely. And that's something that the Anthropic research really dug into. What they found was that 57% of the Claude interactions showed patterns of augmentation,
Okay.
whereas 43% were more focused on automation.
So it's almost an even split,
Yeah.
but leaning slightly towards AI as a tool to help us. Right.
Rather than to replace us.
Exactly. It really reinforces this idea that AI's greatest strength right now is in amplifying human potential.
Not eliminating it.
Right. And the research provided some really great examples of this in action.
Like what?
Well, they found that people were using Claude for what they called task iteration. So basically using to refine and improve their work.
So, I could imagine a web designer using Claude to get feedback on a website design
Exactly.
and then having AI actually make adjustments based on that feedback.
Exactly.
So it's like this constant back and forth leading to a better final product.
Right. And that's a perfect example of augmentation.
Yeah, it's like having an AI assistant working alongside you.
Exactly.
Now, on the automation side, they found people using Claude for things like summarizing large amounts of text or generating code snippets. So those more tedious, repetitive tasks.
Exactly. Tasks that can be done much more efficiently by an AI.
So AI handles the grunt work, and that frees humans up
Right.
to focus on strategy and creativity.
Exactly. And there was another really interesting finding, which was people using Claude for learning.
Yeah.
So trying to understand complex topics.
Yeah, they gave the example of gastroenterology.
Oh, wow. So AI isn't just about getting work done faster.
No.
It's also about expanding our knowledge and understanding.
Exactly.
And I think that speaks to its potential to not only automate, but also to democratize access to information and expertise.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really exciting aspect of this whole thing.
Now, before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, I do want to touch on one more point from the research, which is this idea of what they called model preferences.
Oh, yeah.
They were comparing how two different versions of Claude were being used, one called Opus and one called Sonnet.
Right.
Did they notice any patterns in how people were choosing to use each one?
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. They found that Opus was preferred for creative writing tasks and education,
Okay.
while Sonnet was the go-to for coding.
Huh. So even within AI models, we're starting to see specialization.
Exactly. Different models, just like humans, are developing their own strengths, their own areas of expertise.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you think we'll see even more specialized AI models in the future? Like designed for specific industries or professions?
That's a good question. I think it's definitely possible. But we'll have to see how things evolve.
Yeah. It's something to think about for sure.
Definitely. So, before we were talking about these specialized AI models.
Right, like Opus being the writer
Yeah.
and Sonnet being more the coder.
Right, and how people seem to be gravitating towards different models for different tasks.
Yeah, it's like they're already developing their own little specialties.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder if we'll see even more specialization in the future.
Right, like AI models designed for specific industries maybe.
Exactly. And that actually leads us to one of the, I think, most significant takeaways from this whole research project.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the big takeaway?
Well, it's that this research really gives us a data-driven snapshot of how AI is actively changing the nature of work right now.
Not in some distant future.
Right now, today. And that's what makes this research so compelling. It's not speculation. It's based on real-world data.
Yeah, we keep saying that, but it's important.
It is, because it underscores this need to pay attention to these trends and understand, what are the implications for our own careers, our own industries.
So what are some of the key insights then that we can take away from this research? What should our listeners be thinking about?
Well, one of the things that really stands out is this shift towards a more collaborative model of work,
Right.
where humans and AI are working side by side.
We talked earlier about augmentation versus automation.
Exactly. And remember, the data showed that augmentation was slightly more prevalent,
Yeah.
which suggests that the most successful workplaces of the future are going to be those that can effectively integrate AI into their workflows.
Yeah, it's not about replacing humans with robots.
No, it's about figuring out how to use AI to enhance human capabilities, to make us better at what we do.
So finding that sweet spot where AI helps us be more productive, more creative, more insightful.
Right. Think of it this way. AI can handle the repetitive, data-heavy tasks,
Right.
which frees up humans to focus on things that require creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence.
Yeah, the things that AI still struggles with.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the optimistic view. But are there any potential downsides to this shift? Anything we should be cautious of?
Well, yeah, one concern is that as AI takes on more tasks, certain fields might become less valuable in the job market.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say AI becomes really good at data entry or even basic coding.
Okay.
Well, then individuals who specialize in those areas might find it harder to compete.
So it's not that entire jobs will disappear,
No, not necessarily.
but certain skills might become obsolete.
Right. And I think that highlights the need for us to be adaptable, to be constantly learning and acquiring new skills.
To keep pace with these changes.
Exactly. Education and training are going to become even more vital.
Yeah, we need to prepare the workforce for this AI-driven future.
Absolutely. Equip people with the skills they need to thrive in a world where AI is just like a ubiquitous tool.
This isn't something we can just ignore and hope it goes away.
No, we have to be proactive.
We have to shape this future.
Right. And that's why research like this is so valuable. It gives us data, it gives us insights that can help us make informed decisions.
Yeah, so we can navigate this transition thoughtfully, strategically.
Exactly.
It's definitely been an eye-opening conversation for me. I'm already thinking about, my own work and how AI might impact my field in the years to come.
Yeah, it's something we all need to be thinking about.
Especially since we're still in the early stages of AI development,
That's right. We're just scratching the surface.
which means things are going to change even faster in the coming years.
Oh, yeah. It's a really dynamic field, and we need to be prepared to adapt and evolve.
So what can our listeners do then to prepare for this AI-driven future? What steps can they take right now?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed. Keep learning about AI, how it's being used in your industry, in your specific job.
Don't just bury your head in the sand.
Exactly. Be proactive, be curious, be willing to experiment with new AI tools.
Don't be afraid to, get your hands dirty.
Right, because AI has this incredible potential to revolutionize the way we work and live. But it's up to us to make sure it's used ethically and responsibly.
That's a really important point. It's not about fearing AI. It's about understanding it
Exactly.
and harnessing its power for good.
Exactly. And, listener, what are your thoughts on all this? What's standing out to you from this conversation? We'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, let us know what you're thinking.
And in the meantime, we'll be back after a short break to wrap up our deep dive and explore some final thoughts on the future of work in this rapidly changing landscape.
So we're back and ready to wrap things up.
Yeah, it's been a really fascinating deep dive into, the real world of AI.
We've seen how it's already being used in all these different ways, from writing to coding, market research, even learning complex medical topics.
And it's clear that this is just the beginning.
Right, we're just scratching the surface of what AI can do.
And that brings us to a final thought, a question we want to leave you with.
Okay, hit us with it.
As AI keeps evolving at this crazy pace, how do you think it will reshape the skills and jobs of the future?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What will the future of work even look like?
It really makes you think, will we see even more specialization with AI handling super specific tasks and humans focusing on, other areas?
Or could we see entirely new jobs emerging? Jobs we can't even imagine right now. Jobs that blend human ingenuity with AI capabilities in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
Right. It's a question with no easy answers, but it's one we all need to be asking ourselves.
This is the future, whether we're ready for it or not.
And it's up to us to shape it. That's the key takeaway here. We can't just sit back and wait to see what happens.
We have to actively engage with these questions, explore the possibilities, and prepare for the changes that are coming.
So, listener, what are your thoughts? We've thrown a lot at you today, but we really want to hear your perspective.
What skills do you think will be most valuable in the future? What kinds of jobs do you see being in high demand?
And even more importantly, how can we make sure that AI is used to create a more equitable and prosperous society for everyone?
Those are questions we all need to be thinking about, both individually and as a society.
This deep dive has given us a glimpse into the present reality of AI, but the future is still being written.
And you, listener, have a role to play in shaping that future.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Because the future of work is in our hands.
That's right. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did.
And we'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.